Syncretism as a method implies the simultaneous coexistence and political confrontation of two or more, often incommensurable modes of producing and reproducing our perceptions, relationships, and world. In the Papuan rainforest, Africa's Sahel Desert, the Hawizeh marshes of Iran and the high Andes Mountains, there persists a diverse archipelago of architectures, practices, and techniques for losing, recovering, and reinventing the world. Just as certainly, radical divergent ways of seeing, relating, knowing, building, and living continue to emerge everywhere, yet just as swiftly they are being shut down, as their land, bodies, forms of life, knowledges, and world-making techniques, including those involving the participation of non-human kin, stars, rivers, the living, the dead, and the unborn, have come under attack and been dispossessed. Colonized and subjected peoples have emerged as preeminent ontological master architects. Central to their techniques is syncretism, a method for blending, hybridizing, or ingeniously nesting their divinities, knowledge systems, and practices within monotheistic and European socio-economic frameworks, without allowing those knowledge practices to be subsumed or synthesized. Today, amid mounting crises and as dispossessed peoples increasingly enter the domain of state politics, radically different ways of seeing, being, and building have begun to destabilize extractivism's monopoly on reality, one grounded in the fiction of property and a knowable universal nature as categorically distinct from politics or culture. For instance, since the early 21st century in Ecuador, New Zealand, and Canada, earth beings such as mountains and water bodies have emerged as sentient political actors to be protected and cared for, endowed with legal rights to their reproduction and flourishing. In this context, syncretism diverges from, within and against, the incessant homogenization and urbanization that continues to threaten many with extinction. Yet syncretism is a permanent feature of perpetual historical transformation. Europe itself was once an enigmatic constellation of colliding and interweaving practices and realities. Its archaeological and historical records dispel the myth of any stable, universal truth or single ideal mode of thinking, relating, or living. This year, we interrogated the instruments of the dominant fiction. How might architecture offer techniques for losing the world, inhabiting multiple incommensurable worlds simultaneously, and creating new ones? Often this demands learning from and aligning with those who resist dispossession, who care for and protect their kin, and who are already living and building otherwise. This year, we explored a fourth category of syncretism, one that emerges when disaster or crisis prompts communities to lose faith in dominant techno-political assemblages, namely state and corporate architectures and infrastructures that are centrally planned, managed, and governed for accumulation. The failure of infrastructure's promise compels communities to experiment with alternative ways of structuring their relations, ways that refuse the separations of body from land, technology from politics, cosmogony from infrastructure, culture from nature, or life from its forms. The effect of syncretism is thus not only to provide perspectives on radically different modes of seeing, relating, and building, but also to keep them in relation and thus allow them to constantly destabilize each other. Our projects learned from and thought with collectively owned and governed group water schemes in Ireland, where communities are experimenting with new uses of infrastructure and technology as spaces for ecological and religious practices, and hydropolitics, amidst water's depletion and contamination by big data and big agro. We learned from communities in Turkey reactivating newly old, pre-Islamic and Islamic forms of sympathetic magic to assist water in its descent from clouds to aquifer, rituals newly charged with meaning, as droughts and floods can no longer be dismissed as natural phenomena, but become the explicit consequence of a metaphysics of incessantly expanding production whose roots can be traced back to ancient imperial mythology. We learned from urban indigenous communities in Yakutsk, where ancient dances are being revived and radically reinvented and co-produced with new technologies and a mutating climate, as ways of living with rapidly melting permafrost and a military necropolitics that brings death to both the land and its human sons. In each of these instances, we investigated how architecture might take the side of those who are already always working to open land, infrastructure and architecture to new, free, uncommon and emancipatory uses and forms of enjoyment.